So one of the more important changes that it would have affected is our Japanese workers.
Mm-hmm.
Because after
They were
Pearl Harbor,
interned.
they would have been sent to internment camps as well.
Even all the way up here.
All Japanese, whether Canadian or not, would have been sent to internment camps. Yeah, they would have boarded the train and off they would have gone. There are some internment camps. They weren't throughout Canada. There's some, I think, in Saskatchewan. There was one in BC. There was one in Manitoba. I believe there was one in Ontario. I don't think there was one in Quebec though, but they would have been all sent to internment camps. So we're still in the European section here, and one fella would have stayed here year round. This is before the reduction plant was put in place. So we're talking a good 60 years of operating like that, and he would have lived here. This is the night watchman's house, and it's the only house on site that has insulation. And we're told he had a cat, so we installed a little cat house here. And Europeans, of course, some of these shacks, actually, some of them, we would have also got from up above, because see, the rail, when it came in, I mean, they did house their people and their management in these types of homes, along the way type of thing. And we would have inherited some of those homes. They would have been moved down over to the Cannery, because once the rail was in, these homes wouldn't have been used anymore.
Okay.
This house here is the only two-story house on site, and that was where the Europeans would have lived. And those, when I say Europeans, those are the guys that were working in the office there. Those are the planners. Those are the management of the company, or the lower management, if you wish. So 60 or so could have lived in this house. Right now, we rent it out, and we can rent it out. 21 people can stay there. We rent it out as a hostel, or room by room, or the entire house. So these guys would have had access to this mess hall right here, and a Chinese cook would have been supplied, would have resided on site as well, like this. So along here, we're going into the Japanese area. So what we have left there are the remnants of the net loft. Now the Japanese, again, gifted boat makers, boat tenders, and they really would have had a very important role here with the fleet, and they were good fishermen too. So they would have brought a lot of knowledge with them when they came. Many would have stayed here too, of course, up until the war. But then after Pearl Harbor, everyone here would have been sent. At one point, some of them would have even gone to this island here, which is Smith Island. If you go around the island, there are some structures and homes. And at one point, there was like a school on that island. And they needed the student population to keep the school open. And a lot of the Japanese that would have been here, these would have been bosses, okay? And they would have been here with their families. So they would have gone there in order to keep the student population, to keep the schools open. But after Pearl Harbor, everyone having to leave, that school would have closed. So the last flag, I mean, it's just put at that door, because we do a scavenger hunt for kids, but it's not an LGBTQ.
I was about to say.
Yeah, no, it's because Prince Rupert's flag for their cannery is rainbows, because Prince Rupert is known as the Rainbow City because of our rains and our sun. But because of our history. The last house we were about to start going to visit, this would have been a Japanese bunkhouse, and on its side here, we're about to reinstall it, are Japanese baths. So typical Japanese bath. Right now it's on its side. You see there's a chimney coming out.
Yeah.
So it would have been a stove inside this bath. So women would have bathed in the afternoon, and men would have bathed in the evening. Now we're just... It does require a bit more work, because our groups are usually pretty large. We can have like 20-30 people per tour.
Oh wow.
And so there's a weight thing, right, when we go in there. So we're about to get this up and installed, and we'll get the Japanese bath back in there. But sadly, I mean, this particular home right here was owned by not owned, the Cannery owned the homes, but was occupied by Shikitani with his family. And yes, he would have been one of the bosses. And he did come back after internment camp. And as was the habit of all governments, when they were sent to internment camp, they would have seized all their personal possessions. So when they did come back, there was nothing of their own personal belongings left, although they didn't own the home, but they did return. There are some places in Port Edward that they don't really have any remnants of it, but I've had visitors come through here, Japanese visitors, of a certain age where they have pictures of themselves, like with their siblings, driving tricycles on these types of boardwalks right in Port Ed, where they would have had a segregated town where they were boat makers. So I don't know if you're a reader or whether you follow
Not much, no.
CBC's Canada Reads.
Nope.
And every year CBC radio
Yeah.
have like a book competition, like it's like a book club, right?
Okay.
And there's always a book that's selected, and people vote, and we have various people that discuss which books. And well, this year's winner of that book was, and I'm just going to show you around here. This year's winner author was by the name of Mark Sakamoto, and his book was called, and the title is Forgiveness, and it all has to do with internment camps, when his grandparents were sent to internment camps. So it's really, I'm hoping we're trying to get the book here at the shop, because it's an incredible book, and it kind of ties in with the population that would have been here. Because all of this rail too, I mean, without the Chinese workers, there would be no rail, right?
Yeah.
And it was said that for every 10 feet of rail, there's a Chinese death. So that's how much it was costly. So if you look at any of the promotional material of the cannery itself, and you see some of our brochures, this is the vista that we're taking. Of course, it doesn't look quite as attractive now because the tide isn't all completely up, but this is the view, and this is where we have a painting in the guest shop, and we have, our brochure, and we have various other things, but this is the representation that you'll see. This is the vista that you'll see.
Yeah.
Look, a minute ago we could see from there. Look at how, that was dissipating a bit. Just can't catch a break with this weather. So this does complete the tour. I know it's a long tour, but you're certainly free to walk about and back inside the cannery to read some of the things if you wish. And in the office itself has a lot of interesting things on the walls, and folks that would have, some of the management of the canneries that would have been here. And actually on the weekend when we had the Intertidal Festival, of course, I'm not originally from here, so I wouldn't have a lot of history way back, but some folks do, and they've come here, and you'll notice on the wall inside the office is a name by a fellow by the name of Philipson, I believe his last name was, and his son was here at the Intertidal Festival, and he remembers when he was a kid living here, as a young kid, but he remembers as he became a teenager that he got himself a job inside the cannery too. Wow. So those would have been the later years, of course, because the early years was quite rustic. And again, they at one point, all of us and would have a lot of the folks here that did the fishing, they would have lost a lot of the fishermen because they would have booked over here to Cassian, and they would have gone over to that cannery because they had a more modern fleet. So, and there would have been a lot of unrest, a lot of labor disputes, and the very earliest strikes that would have occurred around here would have been in the 1900s. So we're very labor intensive in the sense that labor voiced Canada with our unions and what have you. So that would have changed around here too. But the bulk of it though would have all been 60% or so folks would have been First Nations, and that would have all along here, all of these canneries would have really affected the economy here too, because this was a method of getting income, right? Like actual cash. So it's quite the undertaking when you think about it. In Vancouver, there's another cannery that's still standing, and only parts of it. It's in Stevenson. It's just minutes from the airport, and they have a display of labels too. And some of their labels will specifically say, because again, the market for the salmon was European, and some of these labels will say, made by whites, only to circumvent the fear that perhaps the Japanese were poisoning you through the product. Because a lot of Japanese would have worked at these canneries, right? And in Vancouver, a lot of them would have been on the canning line. Here, mostly you would have had First Nations and Chinese, but there they would have had more Japanese. So, the population in Vancouver, of course, is very Chinese and Japanese, but reason being is that really without the Chinese, BC would not be BC, because we wouldn't have had the corridor of the rail, right? So they would come back and forth. At one point we charged a head tax for Chinese. It started off at 50, then went up to 150, then it was 500. because once the rail was done, that was it. You shut the borders. You're not coming
Yeah.
back. We're through. But by the mid-40s, Canada did reverse all of that, you know. And okay, yeah, I mean, most of the nations did rely on that type of labor to begin with, right? So yeah, there were lots and lots and lots of history. People have all kinds of stories from living here, and I'll have First Nations women that will come here, and they remember living here when they were like 8 and 9 years old and playing here, and one of them said she was working here as a babysitter to the other kids, and at the end of the summer, her and her sister would have popped on the train here, and they would have been sent to residential schools. So like you get like it's odd how not certainly the story's not odd, but it's just odd how we have all kinds of this has touched people from all angles, right? So it's an interesting place.
Yeah.
So voila,